So, my guest today is Amber Wheeler Bacon. And Amber, I'm so glad that you're joining us. You are a writer and you are with South Carolina Writers Association. And gosh, there's a lot going on now with your organization. As I know that you have a conference coming up in April. But first, I wanted to ask you. Maybe just a little bit about your background and how you came to be a writer and what you do.
Okay. So my parents did not go to college. And so when I was going to college, they were very much kind of like, well, you need to, because of course I'd always kind of thought about writing. I've always been a reader, but I never, my parents were very much like, you need to do something marketable or you need to do something that has an actual career where you can get a job and get like a steady paycheck, And so, of course, I went into teaching instead. My mom really wanted like a marketing degree or like a computer science degree, but I went into teaching. So I am a literacy specialist, kind of like that's my career. Um, and so I work with readers. I work at a public Montessori school from first to eighth grade. But I never kind of forgot about wanting to be a writer. And so I guess my midlife crisis a few years ago was really wanting to kind of see if I could not change careers, but just see what would happen if I tried to write. And so I told myself that if I wrote every day for 6 months, that I could apply for MFA programs. And while I did that, I wanted a way to get feedback on my work. And so I just kind of Googled like, writing critiques, South Carolina. And it happened that in my neighborhood, there was a group, a, uh, a critique group that met at the library, like 4 blocks from my house every other weekend. And so I joined the South Carolina Writers Association. And it was really like a nice support group for me while I was kind of trying to stick to that goal of writing every day and getting response and learning what it was like to get feedback on work before I then got an MFA where you get a lot of really strong feedback on your work. So it was like a nice little bit, easing myself into that new world of writing critiques. So that's what I did. I did write every day for 6 months, and then I applied for MFA programs, and then I got my MFA, and so now I teach part time and I try to write and edit part time. Is kind of like how things have gone in the past year or so since I got my MFA.
And so the topics that you like to write about, what are you drawn to?
Um, I I write fiction. I do have some nonfiction. I have a few essays that I've published, and I have literary criticism that I've published and reviews and stuff. But I guess I write a lot about family.
Mhm.
I do. So I have a novel right now that I've kind of finished, and it's with an agent right now, and we're kind of figuring out what the revision process should be. I hope I'm done with it, but and it's kind of about family. It's about mothers and daughters and
Mhm.
sort of the South. I'm from Atlanta, and so I write a lot kind of about the strange dynamic of living in the South and kind of like being a modern person in the modern world, but having some kind of like old fashioned things around you. I
Yeah.
don't know, just growing up in Atlanta, I didn't realize until I was like 17 that Sherman was like a bad guy. You know what I mean? I thought that Sherman was like a bad guy because I grew up in Atlanta. I didn't realize like, oh, you know, he was with the North. Those were the good guys. Just things like that that you're thinking, oh my gosh, that was the 80s. How is it possible that in the 80s? So I kind of like write about, just the things like that.
Interesting. Well, congratulations on getting your MFA, and
Thanks.
that's a great story. It sounds like you've had quite a journey as far as your writing and really the calling that you have to do it because it just kept knocking on your door, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah, and despite having a family and having kids, and I think the 6 month thing was really good because it was a big financial commitment, a time commitment and a financial commitment. And so I really had to prove to myself that like this was something important that I was willing to sacrifice for and that my family would have to sacrifice for, so
So
yeah.
that 6 months when you said you were going to write every day, you literally stopped working so you could focus on writing for that 6 months.
I did not stop working. I just made sure that I found a couple hours a day,
To do
I
it.
mean, I
Okay.
might at the end of the day, so it was really like, I don't know if I had specific goals.
Mhm.
I had to feel kind of, even if it was like 30 minutes, if I knew, I have the kids' soccer practices after work, or I'm going to have to be because I did like write in the car at my kids' soccer practice,
Mhm.
but I just figured out a way like whether it was okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. instead of
Mhm.
5:45 so that I can finding time, making sure that it was a commitment that I did every single day, that I figured out a way to fit it in.
You may have just offered encouragement to someone who wants to write, but is just not really sure how to get started. So, thank you for sharing that background
You're
about
welcome.
yourself and how you're weaving that into your life. So tell us a little bit about you mentioned that you belong to a CWA and that it sounds like you found it in a group that's near you. Is that correct? And people that could read, give you feedback, that kind of thing. So that's been helpful to you, I'm imagining, and that's available for other people that might want to join the organization, those groups that critique and listen and so forth. And then their conference is coming. We'll talk a little bit about their conference right now, and maybe who should attend that conference.
So yeah, so the South Carolina Writers Association, just very briefly, it has kind of three sort of legs, or three parts of the association part. One of them are the critique groups, this idea of getting feedback on your work, connecting with other writers, sharing
Mhm.
your work, having, reading other people's work, learning to read other people's work and learning to get feedback, which is important for any writer. The other part is education. So events that you can go to learn more about writing, whether it's like small workshops, regional workshops around the state, or our big annual conference that we're having in April. The other one is the publications arm, and so we don't need to talk about that. But those are the three kind of pillars of the organization. And
Mhm.
so the annual conference is usually kind of the culmination. It's a big event that everyone gets really excited about, and it really is. Our focus this year was really to have everything for like all writers, because like I write literary fiction, and so a couple years ago I was the one who created the conference, and it very much had like a literary feel. Like, we have these literary fiction authors, and they're giving these workshops. And I realized in doing that oh, I kind of like closed some doors, and maybe some of the workshops weren't as interesting to like a romance writer, or something like that. Although I do think that you could get stuff from all of them, but this idea that whatever you're writing, you can come to this conference and find something. And so it's in April. It's April 16th to April 18th. It's kind of Friday afternoon through Sunday afternoon. There's just going to be online events throughout the weekend, and there really is something for everyone. So we do have some literary fiction authors. We also have some commercial fiction. We have nonfiction. We have essayists. We have Belle Boggs wrote a book about infertility, a book of essays. So we have agents and editors that are going to be there. So kind of anything you're interested in writing, whether it's nonfiction, fiction, poetry, there's going to be something for you at the conference.
And what about those individuals that might be writing but want to learn more about publishing, agents, that kind of thing? Is there an opportunity for that as well?
There are. So we have several agents and editors who are going to be there. One of the panels I'm really excited about is there's going to be an author, an agent, and an editor from one of the big houses, one of the big publishing houses. They're
Mhm.
going to be on a panel, and they're going to kind of talk about the book from manuscript to like the marketplace. And what all goes into that process, from the author writing it, then revising with the agent, then getting it sold, and all the parts of contract negotiation and things like that happen. And so each person that kind of represents the different phases of that process. they're going to be there. So that's going to be a panel that I'm excited about. Um, there's also a panel that so Jeffrey Blount was one of the first Black executives at NBC, and he is now a published author, and he and his agent are doing a panel and kind of a workshop on kind of the shy person's guide to self-promotion.
Mhm.
And which you really, if you're a writer, you kind of, it's really interesting because it is sort of not something that most writers are, comfortable with, this idea of self-promotion or just getting out there and kind of being proud of your work and selling it. But you have to do that for so much of, you have to do that when you find an agent. You have to know how to talk about your work in a way that's going to attract an agent. But then you also, once you get an agent, you have to, I mean, there's so many places in the journey of where, or just in the writing journey or in the being an author, where you have to know how to do those things. And so that's going to be one of the panels that I'm really interested in too, because I'm not good at self promotion. So I think that will be really interesting. So yeah, so there's going to be agents, editors, and authors there, kind of a reflection of who kind of makes the writing business run.
Mhm. Excellent. And so, how, so this is a conference that's virtual, and that may be new to some people. But do you feel like it's going to be effective? Do you feel like, I mean, you've seen behind the scenes how this is being constructed and so forth. What do you think about how the experience of attending a virtual conference?
Well, we really wanted, I mean, someone who myself has a family, one of the things I really love about conferences is this idea that you go, you get to get away from your house, you get away and you're kind of consumed by the world, whatever kind of conference it is. I mean, when I go to education conferences, is the same thing, you get to get away and you're just plopped into this world where everything you see and everything you do revolves around that thing that, you're interested in. And so that was one of the challenges of creating a virtual conference was how can we give people the feeling that they're in a conference or the networking opportunities or just, even visually a sense that they are partaking in something that is separate from their everyday life. And so we have put a lot of emphasis on even just like the website, the place you go. We got this idea from the Writers Digest conference. This idea that so they had when you went to the conference website, it really did look like a little like a conference, backdrop, and where what you would see when you would walk into the conference, like kind of arena to register or whatever. And then the links were, exhibit hall or so the links represented physical places that you would go
Mhm.
if you were at the conference, and then also offering attendees of the conference to a chance to or a place to go to network. And so having, chat rooms open for different genres, whatever you're interested in, we've done that, or we are constructing a website that will have those things. We're going to have some open Zoom sessions for writers that kind of represent like booths that you would stop by if you were going into an exhibit hall. I mean, usually the things you find there are not things that you're expecting to find. You just kind of, or conversations you end up having with people who have things to sell you at the exhibit hall. And so we're trying to find digital ways to replicate those experiences as much as possible.
It sounds like a pretty rich experience. I mean, I agree with you. It's the immersion you usually go for and the people that you get exposed to. But it sounds like you're really innovative in your approach to kind of replicating that. So,
We're
um,
trying.
so that's interesting to know. And I can imagine that there's sponsorships. So individuals that might want to be involved in certainly in registering. But then also individuals can potentially sponsor and maybe get their name out there if they're an appropriate sponsorship for this conference. Is that the case?
There are different sponsorship levels
Okay.
that we're offering, and they kind of, it's about kind of uh, sort of how they appear on the website,
Mhm.
in the exhibit hall, little like links or images, and that we're trying to make it look again as much like a real conference as possible. So having like little tables with kind of logos on
Mhm.
top of them. I've seen it done like that. So we're gonna have kind of a like a digital what are the bags called that you get when you go to a conference?
Yes,
It's
those,
like the
yes.
goodie bag that you get. So we're gonna
Huh?
have a digital one of those with coupons, things like that that sponsors are offering. So
Mhm.
we're trying to do as much as we can in that way.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like so much thought has gone into this, and it definitely sounds like a wonderful experience. I know it's being information about this conference is being distributed at Clemson in the English department, and so we want to get the word out. I also think that business students wanting to be better writers and understand tone and so forth, certainly as they write even nonfiction or case studies, could certainly learn a lot by attending. And a lot of us have personal writing goals in addition to our work. So I'm excited about hearing you talk about how you steered yourself in and how you set up a discipline for writing. And that's very inspiring to me. So I think that what we want to maybe just wrap up with, because we wanted to just give a snapshot here of the upcoming conference and take people to the site so they can make sure they can go on and check it out. And the site is called.
It's www.myscwa.org.
Okay.
And if you go there and go to events, there is a link to the annual conference. But I will say, so one of the workshops is called the Soul of Story, and I worked for grants management, especially like biology grants and science grants at University of Louisville. And I remember one of our researchers who got a lot of grants. I was kind of at that point I was taking a creative writing class, and she would stop by my desk and we would talk. And she talked about how, the scientific articles that she was publishing on, like, um
Mhm.
neuroscience, or I don't even remember what she did. But she had to find a way to make her articles, make her research like interesting and
Mhm.
sexy, and make them, and that was all about writing. And she used to talk to me all the time about how especially like the beginning of her research, or when she was applying for these grants, or submitting articles, that she really had to make sure that their writing was
Mhm.
really quality writing, and that there was a story to tell, that no matter what your discipline, knowing the story to tell is essential. And I can really see that in business school too, that that's how you sell things. You have a story. So
It's so true. And, I think that's why Dan Pink said the MFA could be the new MBA.
oh wow.
Because you have to be able to tell the story and create a narrative, and so yeah, I know I'm definitely going to be sharing this writer conference in my MBA class for advanced leaders, because I do believe that the ability again to create a narrative, to tell a story, sometimes is really helpful for a leader who is helping people move forward on a journey within a business, and helping people understand everything that's involved, and just really good at that, or crafting a product, a message around a product, can be really important too. So I'm excited to offer this information to my students in the master's in business program, but I definitely think that again, I think learning words are fascinating, and really learning to be better in our writing is a goal for a lot of us, and just connecting in with people. And when you were talking about becoming part of that circle of writers when you initially started, it just reminded me of a metaphor once I heard about running a marathon. I mean, you can do it on your own, but when you're with a group of people with the same kind of goals, you will do it faster and better because you're learning from them and because you're with them, and there's just a momentum that happens there. So I'm excited to attend the conference myself this year, which will be my first time, and learn
Yay.
from individuals that are there. And I'm just studying at the feet of everyone, who's working on their running goals. And you have a novel. I mean, congratulations to you that
Oh,
you've been
thanks.
able to work on this novel, and along with everything else that you're doing. So we're wishing you the very best, as we see your dog stretching over your shoulder. My dog is of
And
course
I'm like,
here.
should I move so that, but then you get
No,
when you
you're
talk and
perfect. You're perfect. My dog's already tried to stick his head in the camera. He does on every Zoom call. But no, it's exciting. And so as we leave, we've given information about the conference. And then the last thing I would ask you, just as we were wrapping up, because I do so admire writers, and just how do you keep yourself motivated? Do you set the same time every day? How do you keep yourself motivated, that date with writing?
So, my practice has changed since the pandemic began. It has become because I had a very set schedule and I was very dogmatic about it, and it has been more difficult. I had Stuart Onan as a pretty well known fiction writer, literary fiction writer. He's written like 17 novels, and I was lucky enough to do a writing workshop with him a couple months ago, and he said something really great. He was like, one, you have to give yourself permission to like write junk. He was like, I expect you to write junk every day. And so have expectations for yourself for the quality of work that you produce. Understand that like that you're going to have to write a lot of bad things in order to get some good things.
Mhm.
And that's part of the process. So respecting that part of the process. And the other thing is setting goals that you can achieve. And so even if you're having a really bad week, or if you have a big project at work due, and so maybe you give yourself a goal of 3 sentences for that week, 3 sentences a day for that week. So
Mhm.
really matching, not letting yourself off the hook, and not getting rid of your writing goals, but kind of changing them, and understanding that there are things that happen in life that are going to change some of those things. Because what I did find is at the beginning of the pandemic, because I was no longer, because my kids were with me all the time and I had
Mhm.
no time alone, I was so shaken that I was really like hard on myself about it. And then it like just created more bad habits. And so for the first time in years, I didn't write for, a month, 6 weeks, because it was like I was stuck in this cycle. And so kind of resetting that, and saying, understand that this is part of it too. And kind of like being okay with less productivity is okay in certain times or whatever. But I really like the idea of setting measurable goals that you can actually achieve to kind of build yourself up a little bit. And then once you get those 3 sentences a day down for a week, you're like, okay, well, then it's easier to build in another sentence, or okay, now I'm going to try half a page or whatever. So and oftentimes what you find is that once you got those 3 sentences, then you end up producing more, because you're kind of in a zone then, and you're kind of not thinking about it anymore. So that's what
And I guess that begs the question, and I have to ask it is, do you always write on one project? Do you ever move around and work on a couple of different writing projects at one time, during the same period? Or do you try to stay focused and select one thing you're working on at a time?
I think it depends on whatever phase you're
Mhm.
in. I do feel like once I had like a good draft of my novel, then I was going in and I got into this kind of like phase where I was just doing editing, and I was doing so much editing that I kind of like forgot how to produce and just be generative. And kind of because I was dealing with a close to finished product
Mhm.
for 6 months, every day going into that close to finished product, starting a new project and being like messy was really hard for me. I was expecting the same kind of like cleanness,
Mhm.
that I'd been dealing with. And so it was hard for me to transition. Most of the time, I kind of dabble where, I'd have like 20 good days of working on one project. and then kind of taking a little bit of a break. But I think it depends on, to me, sometimes it'll depend on like what the actual moment is. Like if I'm in something and I'm just not really, nothing's happening,
Mhm.
then I'll like stop and just say, okay, like I'm gonna read for a little bit, or I'm gonna take a walk and see if I can get back into it. And if I don't, then I'm like, okay, well, what else am I thinking about? Let me just, or having strategies to unbuckle that, like for a month period, when I couldn't think of anything to write, I started every sentence with "I remember." And
Mhm.
so I have my new novel that I'm working on. I have like, 20 pages of worth where every paragraph starts with "I remember," just because I could not, there was like
Wow.
no other way that I could
Uh-huh.
unlock it. And so of course now I have to go back in and clean that up, but that's what you have to do in the beginning of a big project anyway, is kind of be okay with being messy.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Yeah, I do dabble, but I mean, it just depends on, I really kind of take the moment of, when I'm sitting there with my computer, or, like sometimes I'm just like writing, weird things in my notebook that just don't really look like writing, but somehow it ends up being writing.
Mhm. And
So,
so you teach writing, is that correct?
I do, yeah, I do some writing workshops for different organizations. I've been an adjunct professor before, teaching writing. I'm not right now,
Mhm.
I have an upcoming workshop for Pat Conroy Literary Center called Caves and Cathedrals, writing a novel in daylight and dark, that I'm really excited about, because so much about the process of writing a novel is like this combination between having no idea what you're doing,
Uh-huh.
and then also having some idea or trying to search for daylight. So yeah, caves. Uh, Henry Melville described writing a novel as building a cathedral, and Virginia Woolf described it as digging caves, and so that's kind of where that comes from. But
That's
yeah, so
interesting.
I'm excited about that workshop.
What is the date on that?
I think it's March 25th,
Okay.
March 26th. They haven't. We just scheduled it last week, and so it's not publicized yet. It'll be publicized this week, I think.
But
So yeah,
that's
I'm
at the
excited.
Pat Conroy Writing Center, and it's Caves and Cathedrals
Mhm.
workshop. That's exciting. That's really exciting. I
Yeah.
think, and that will be online, I would imagine, at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll have to check that out. Well, you've been very generous with your time, Amber, and you're just a lovely young woman. I just congratulations on all your success and
Oh, thank you.
following your dream. I loved your story, and it makes me want to read what you write.
Oh,
So
yay.
I
Well,
really
hopefully you won't be disappointed.
so I really appreciate it. And yeah, and so South Carolina Writer Association upcoming conference, we'll definitely, hopefully be seeing you there as well. So thank you so much for your time today. Any last thing that you want us to know?
No, that's it. Yeah, it's called the South Carolina the Storytelling State. And it's kind of all about, storytelling. So yeah, we'd love to have Clemson students.
Great. Okay, very good. Well, thank you again, and
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Gail.
you're welcome. Stay warm.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.